So Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is finally here, which may come as a bit of a surprise to some of you due to the lack of advertising around the game, which is a bit weird, I gotta say. Maybe it got overshadowed by all the Grand Theft Auto news, but I haven't hardly seen anything about this game on social media. Now, I've been playing a review copy provided by Ubisoft for about a week now, and I think this one's going to be pretty hit and miss for a lot of people. Now, the Avatar movie franchise is insane. It holds both the #1 and #3 spots for the top grossing movies of all time, and now I'm not a mega fan of the franchise, but I do enjoy the movies. So when I originally heard that there was going to be a new game based on the movies, I was a bit curious. But when I heard that Ubisoft was making it, I had pretty low expectations. And yes, I said Ubisoft. I know some people call it Ubisoft. I used to call it Ubisoft, but I looked it up. Apparently people say it both ways. Now, I used to be a huge Ubisoft fan like 10 years ago, but the past few years, I haven't really liked very many of their games, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. And I was rooting for Ubisoft to really nail this game because they desperately need a new IP to work with. So how did they do with Avatar? Well, honestly, it's kind of a mixed bag. In some areas, I felt like they did really well, and then in other areas, it definitely was a bit lackluster. Now, I haven't fully beaten the game yet because this game is just absolutely massive, but I've definitely gotten far enough into the game that I can give you guys a pretty solid impression / mini review. So first off, I have to say that this game is one of the most beautiful video games that I have ever played. Now, I'm not sure how directly involved James Cameron was with this game, but it feels like there was a standard that had to be met with the visuals. But I couldn't tell you how many times I just completely stopped what I was doing while I was playing just to take in the scenery. And I mean, come on, just look at these clips.
This place. The sounds alone are enough to paint a picture worth describing to everyone. The crashing of the falling water. The stream running nearby. The rustling of the leaves. The creaking of the woods. The whooshing of the wind between the rocks.
Yeah, this game is gorgeous. And honestly, the game is so just freaking beautiful that things that would normally bother me in most games like boring fetch quests or harvesting resources didn't really bother me much because I was having so much fun just exploring the beautiful forests of Pandora. But as beautiful as the game is, that doesn't mean it's perfect. In fact, at first, honestly, I didn't really like the game that much at first. The game is huge. There is a ton of content and things to do, which unfortunately means that the game gets off to a bit of a slow start, which is where I think it might lose a lot of people. I was legit getting just straight up angry at the game because I could go a couple of hours and not engage in almost any combat at all. And when I did, it was over pretty much instantly, which brings me to my first major complaint with the game, and it's the game's balancing. This game is extremely easy in most situations. I was playing on the hardest difficulty, and there was times where I had to pause the game just to make sure that I wasn't on easy. Strong enemies. Strong enemies are indicated by having Navi sense. Okay, so these are strong enemies. And I finally get to fight something. Oh my god. Okay. Strong enemies. I hope they're strong. I pray that they're strong. He died in one hit? Come on. You said these are strong enemies. Dude. Dude, come. Combat high. Medium low. I'm on high. Incoming damage, outcoming damage low. Why is it so easy? This is not fun. I just took them all out with... Oh. How do I switch guns again? Okay. Come on, strong enemy. Oh my god. That was the strong enemies? What the hell? I have to wait like an hour plus to finally see combat. Then when I finally get the chance to shoot or to do something with combat, it dies in 2 seconds. These were the hard enemies. Come on, this is so boring. What the fuck? And this unfortunately went on for quite some time, where I would just finally get to face an encounter, but all the enemies would die in just a couple of hits. And I think the reason that it's just so unbalanced is because this game goes off of a gear system. So all of the combat and enemies are going to be scaled based off of their location, where they're at in certain regions, and what your gear level is. So the problem is that if enemies are even remotely close to your level, you just absolutely annihilate everything in your path. Especially once you get the shotgun. Oh my god. Once you get the shotgun, the game is stupid easy. I mean, you're going up against guys in mech suits and you kill them in like 1 to 2 hits. At one point, I was like legit yelling at the game, like, please let me fight something challenging. It's been a couple hours. I've hardly killed anything at all, and I'm getting bored. The only time I've ever struggled with combat is if you like alert an entire camp and you get swarmed by like 20 enemies all at once and they call in reinforcements. And not once in my week of playing have I ever run out of ammo for any of my weapons. Enemies drop so much ammo in every encounter, and it's just so easy to find ammo out in the environment that they honestly could have just given you unlimited ammo and it wouldn't have made a difference. And then on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, let's say I decide to go to an area where the enemies are supposed to be level 20 and I'm only like level 9. The enemies will just completely wreck you. They will one-shot kill you if you go up against any of the people in the mech suits, and the damage that you do to enemies is significantly less. So I tried to infiltrate one of the higher level bases and just be completely stealthy so that I, wouldn't alert the whole base, and it's pretty much impossible. I got to a certain point into the base where it was a staged event and they called in reinforcements, and like it's set up so that you have to fight the reinforcements. Well, as soon as the reinforcements arrive, I died every time because they would just one-shot kill me and I could not deal enough damage to the enemies. So the combat in this game is really hit and miss. It's either you are extremely overpowered or the enemies are extremely overpowered. Now, this isn't to say that the whole game is like this. There's actually some areas where I had to be stealthy and it was a lot of fun. Hopefully by the time you see this video or sometime in the near future after release, they do some sort of update to kind of overhaul the combat and make it a little bit more challenging, because I feel like a lot of people are not really going to have much fun when you run into a fight and you kill everybody in one bullet. And since we're on the topic of combat, another big complaint that I have with this game is the lack of enemy types. There is just not very many enemies to kill. Now, it's one thing with the RDA where you kind of fight the same people over and over. It's just military guys. There's the infantry that you can kill pretty much instantly that are really good at spotting you. And then there's the guys in their mech suits. And then there's the air vehicles. They have like helicopter type vehicles and stuff. And that's about it. And you fight them over and over and over. But the RDA is one thing. I can deal with fighting the RDA. The real problem is what you fight outside of the RDA. I'm talking like the wildlife. And you spend the majority of your game out in the wilderness, like out in the woods. You spend more time out in nature than you do in the like industrial, like oil rigs and the RDA facilities. There's just not very many RDA facilities compared to the vast wilderness. And out in nature, there aren't very many threats. Outside of the occasional plant that might hurt you as you run by it, there's like nothing out in the woods that tries to kill you other than these dog creatures. And they're like the only creature that would try to hunt you or hurt you if you're exploring in the woods. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of woods and trees and forests in this game. Like, that's all there is. And if the only enemy type is one dog, it's it's going to get real repetitive really fast, and it definitely did. Like, I was so fed up with killing the dog creatures. You you have no idea. It got so boring. And there would be a ton of side quests for the tribes where it's like, go here and kill the feral dogs to save the wildlife. And then after killing like 100 of these dogs, by the way, will run away from you once you damage them. Like, if you find a pack of dogs and you shoot them, they all scatter and run deeper into the woods. And then to complete the encounter, you have to hunt them down through the woods. And oh my god, it was awful. I was so over it. I was to the point where if I didn't face a different creature type, I was about to stop playing the game because I was so bored of fighting these dog creatures. So I decided to pivot from the side missions and the exploration, and I decided to just focus on the main story and put the side quests on hold, and I'm so glad that I did, because it ended up opening up to an entirely new area after I played the game for 5 days straight. And in this new area, there were new enemies and new weapons and creatures and just tons of different things to do. So every time I started to feel like the game was getting a tad repetitive, it switched it up on me and introduced me to new things. Like I said, this game is huge, and it's a slow grind, so I feel like some people might be turned off by just how slow it can be sometimes. Here, take a look at the map. I did everything that you could do in this entire area over the course of a week, and it's a pretty big area. And here, just look at this view. Everything that you see here, you can go to, which is just nuts. I was kind of blown away by just how big the environment was. And the crazy thing is that as big as this area was, and it took me an entire week to complete it, this is just a small chunk of the entire map. Yeah. So now, as for the story, I think it's okay. I won't go into too many details because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's pretty simple. It's basically just the plot from the movies. You know, the bad guys come here from Earth, it's the military, and they're here to steal the planet's resources, and you have to try to stop them. That's basically it. It's nothing special, nothing crazy. And the characters, though, they're honestly pretty forgettable. I honestly don't remember the name of almost any of the characters. The dialogue and the writing's pretty meh. It's just, you know, nothing special about it, to be honest. None of the jokes land almost at all. I think there was one little side quest that made me giggle a little bit, and that's about it. It reminds me of the humor from the Marvel's Avengers game, if you guys remember that one. And the main character, like the voice actors, there's a couple voice actors, they aren't very good either. I was not impressed with the voice acting. And that's not to say that the writing and the voice acting is bad, because there are some scenes and scripted moments that actually had me hooked. Like, for example, when you get your Ikron, that was a pretty cool moment. So, you know, the voice acting and the writing does have its moments, but for the most part, it's just pretty average. And the more I think about it, the more this game reminds me of like Far Cry Primal. So if you liked Far Cry Primal, I think you're probably going to end up liking this game. And the biggest compliment that I can probably give this game is that it actually made me care about, you know, making food and cooking. I never cook in video games. Anytime a game wants me to cook to get a buff from food, I don't care. I'd rather just do it the hard way. Like, I never really care to hunt for ingredients in games to cook, like Skyrim or Fallout or Monster Hunter. I don't know. I've just never had a thing for cooking. But in Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, I actually cared about the cooking. I'd go out in the woods and I would hunt for animals and I would look for plants and I would try to get the best ingredients to make the strongest meals. It's probably because they sort of force you to care about food because you have an energy meter, and when the meter gets depleted, you no longer will passively heal when you get in combat, which can suck. And of course, there's different types of meals. It can give you different kind of bonuses and stuff, and every time you fast travel, it's going to like take away from your energy meter. So there's actually a reason to go out and hunt and gather food and stuff. So props to them for making me actually care about cooking, because I never care about cooking. So between trying to find all the best ingredients from hunting and just being in absolute awe of how beautiful the world is as I'm hunting, I think that's kind of why I enjoyed the cooking and crafting system in this game compared to others. I don't know what it is. I mean, I sat here and named off a couple big problems that this game has. I don't know if it's the avatar magic that the movies have that you know, so many people go out and watch it, even though I don't ever hear anyone talk about Avatar, yet it's made the most money ever. Maybe there's just something magical about this franchise. I have no idea. But I don't really know how else to explain it, because this game does have a lot of problems, but I did have fun. I did enjoy it. And it is a game that I would recommend to people if they are a fan of the franchise. There's a lot of features that I'd love to see get added in the future, like more enemies, more collectibles to find in the woods, way more weapons to choose from, because in this game you're pretty limited to what weapons there are. Maybe some RPG elements and player homes or building mechanics, and definitely boss fights. I don't know if this game has boss fights because I'm not beating it yet, but up to the point that I'm at after playing for a week, I've not had like any boss fights, so I'd love to see boss fights. But overall, I think this is a pretty good starting point. For it being a new entry for Ubisoft, obviously they have to test the waters to see what people like, but I think this is a pretty good first entry to a new series. I think if they actually listen to feedback from this game and they try to add more improvements and make changes to the sequel, then I think the sequel could be a really good game. But if they get kind of lazy like they do with Far Cry and Watch Dogs and Assassin's Creed, where it feels like it's just the same game over and over and over, then I don't know how much more of Pandora is worth visiting. I feel like it'll get old pretty quick. But overall, I went in with low expectations and I left pleasantly surprised. I think if you're a fan of the films, then I think you will end up enjoying this game. But as of right now, if I had to give this game a score, since I haven't beaten it yet, I'm sitting at like maybe a 6.5 to a 7 range. So I don't know how good the ending's gonna be. It could, you know, catch me off guard and I could really love it. But I don't see it getting above like an 8 or anything. I think a 7 is a good spot on the out of 10 scale. I mean, 2023 is already a huge year for video games. Now, obviously, this isn't a Game of the Year contender because it didn't meet the deadline, but there's just so many other games that came out this year that, you know, this isn't in the same conversation as Spider-Man or Baldur's Gate 3 or even Starfield or something like that. But it is good, and I hope that this game ends up being a hit for Ubisoft. I feel like they've desperately needed a new game like this, and I can pretty confidently say that if they made a sequel to this game, I would buy it. So those are my thoughts on Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. It's going to be very interesting to see what people think of this game, but let me know down in the comments if you plan on picking this game up, and if you are, then I'll have a huge tips and tricks video out for you guys here in just a couple of days, and you definitely aren't going to want to miss that. But that is going to do it for everything in this video. There was a lot more that I could have talked about, but honestly, I'd be here for hours because this game is just so massive, so I just wanted to give you guys some pros and some cons and just some different things that I liked and disliked about the game. But if you enjoyed this video, then please consider hitting the like button and subscribing, and hopefully I will see you all in my next video.